about the occult is that there's a lot of just verbal histories that, and as you know, with the game of telephone, by the end of it, it's not what it was in the beginning at all. And so when you add to it your in-depth research, you just shed light into so many things that it's like, oh, this is not as bad or as haunted as I thought it was. Or this is not as spooky, right? Like spooky, scary, or this actually resonates in a way, because we all have, a dark side. We all have a shadow. There's all these connections that we can make, and, not to mention the fact that occult only applies to something that is never spoken of, or never given the light of day or the time of day. So is it occult forever? I don't believe so, right? I feel like we're shedding light on so many things as a society. Look at all these happenings going on around the world, which are quite scary and a nightmare in itself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot about what's happened in the past couple of years. I think a lot about it, and I find it's interesting because so much has been revealed about ourselves when we've been all forced to hermit. When we have distractions everywhere, it's really hard to sit down and get silent and go inside. And when we're thinking about occult studies, that's a really good way to describe it. How you said earlier, it's all passed down word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth, because heaven forbid we write it down and create structure around it. Right?
Right.
Heaven forbid we do that. And really, the only thing occult really means is just hidden knowledge. That's all it really means.
Right.
And so in the past 2 years, it seems like 2.5, I guess almost 3 years now, our collective has been forced to look at things from a different perspective, and we were forced to get uncomfortable. And what is more uncomfortable than shadow work? I mean, we're staring deep into these parts of ourselves that we've been told are unlovable, that we've told ourselves are unlovable, and then we're meant to accept it. And I think that the reason why fear stays so deeply into things like when we think paranormal, it just means it's not normal. It means it's unusual. It doesn't mean that it's always scary. But there's this framework that's been put around the occult, the paranormal, the superstitious, and superstition, supernatural, that it's supposed to be scary and frightening. Because at one time they didn't have, us as a collective didn't have a way to explain what we were experiencing.
Right.
But we're in the year 2022 now. There's a lot of resources to look back on. I think that's why I researched so deeply, because I noticed on the internet, things just seem to be regurgitated. And maybe somebody finessed it with a copywriter, but it's regurgitated information. And I wonder, how much further did they go in research? I mean, I dig up books. I dig up old movies. There's a lot of stuff from the 70s that was filmed that you can now find on YouTube. And I think it's so important to go within. And I think maybe that's why it's been so challenging over the past couple of years with our collective, because we've been told to go in. What doesn't feel right? What are you sensing as the truth? Mm-hmm. And that can be very uncomfortable, and then it causes unrest. And so now we're seeing the result of all of this pent-up energy now exploding all over the place. And perfect timing for where we're at in our moon cycles right now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's almost like you can't make it up. Right?
That's right. I know. It's once you start paying attention, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. It's kind of hard to keep calling it unbelievable, right? Because it's almost believable, right? But you go one step further into your research, and I want you to tell all of us about this, which is your haunted field trips. Everybody, she hosts a group of people on an actual physical trip to locations where they get to experience all of it. So tell us about that.
Oh, so I sat on this idea since, I was hitting the third eye with it in 2020. And and it was October 2020. I remember it very clearly. And I was like, wow, but you got to pause, was the first thing I was told. So I got to sit for a good 1.5 years planning and letting it percolate. And what was my intention with these haunted field trips? So I have become, I don't know if it's surly towards my industry, but when I'm looking at ghost hunting shows on TV and in the movies, this is where a lot of people learn about this stuff.
Right. Sensationalism.
That's right. When really, I've done home business and land curings for almost 10 years. And it is, from a medium's perspective, we don't go about spirit in that way at all. And the one thing that I found really disappointing within my industry is a lot of paranormal investigators, they have absolutely no education on energy. They're just starting to learn about how earth energies work with human energies, if they know much about it at all. They go in there with a bunch of equipment, and I get it, because they're going about it from a scientific point of view. They're going in to disprove anything is going on. But when you're dealing with energy and spirit, it doesn't really work that way. So as I was, right? So as I was cooking on this idea of doing haunted field trips, I wanted to take people to places that scare them. But my intention was, for one, to take the fear out of it. Mm-hmm. And I also thought there's just not enough training for mediums in the wild, right? Like, we have these courses online, we take courses in these weekend workshops, we learn the basis of channeling, and then we're told, go do it on your own. So I really wanted to create an experience that was ghost hunting from a medium's perspective, because mediums pick up on, or any type of channeling work you do, or expanding your intuition. I want people to learn how to diagnose what they're feeling. A lot of things make us feel uneasy. Ley lines, for example, make us feel really uneasy, especially if they're confined to a small space in our home. Mm-hmm. Electromagnetic frequencies, or EMFs, they make us feel uneasy. But when you learn to tap into your senses and ask different questions in the space that you're in, then you start to get more information about what's really happening around you, why you really feel uneasy or scared or a little bit nervous. So I wanted to create these haunted field trips to say, for one, it's not scary, it's just energy. And what are you really picking up on? Not to say that we don't pick up on memories from the past that were left as a smudge behind in certain places, like Frank Slide. Frank Slide, Alberta is the site of the second worst landslide in Canadian history. And it took out half of a town of Frank. It was a Turtle Mountain that gave away and basically took out a mining town that was not a whole town. It was only about half of it back in the early 1900s. But I mean, there was already warnings with this mountain. I mean, the Indigenous called it the mountain that moves. And they said we would never settle at the base of this mountain, yet you got settlers coming in, right? Mining coal from this mountain. So anyway, all of this, this landslide came through. And when you go through Frank's Slide, all of the debris is still there. They've just basically cut a highway through it. They have an interpretive center. But when you go through it, it's like the loudest, quietest place you can go through. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's haunted. We see people running across the rocks and this and that. So I thought, what a fun place to try to explore the energy. Right? What's really
what a fun place. That's right.
And then, I mean, polar opposite, I took a group of people to, it's known as a paranormal hotspot in Alberta, known as the Banff Springs Hotel, which is a world famous hotel. It's known as the Castle in the Rockies. It was also built, I believe it started its construction phase in the 1880s, late 1880s. But when you walk through there, like, it gives you the willies. You know, it's made out of stone. And I mean, there was so much energy within that place. It was hard to decipher everything that was going on. But to bring some folks there, we really took the fear out of the Castle in the Rockies, but we also demystified many stories that are told about this haunted hotel far and wide that are actually not true at all. So we got to talk about the haunted history, fact, and fiction, which then helped them diagnose what was going on around them a little bit easier, instead of falling into a trap of the collective story, which is sometimes very different to the truth that's going on there. So my idea behind it was, for one, take fear out. Show them it's just energy. The people who are more in tune with their psychic gifts, I want to be able to demystify what's going on, give education to help them diagnose what's going on around them. And I mean, I expected these to be fun weekends away. Let's go do something fun in a place that's supposed to be spooky. But what they turned into are these deeply healing events where people are going in unsure what's going to happen, and they leave so confidently stepping into their psychic senses that they can take the information that we went over in that weekend and take it and apply it to a lifestyle, Because again, before we even go to this haunted field trip, there's already homework. I'm already passing out homework. I'm like, you work on your psychic senses before we show up. Get
Right.
ready. This is a field trip, right? We're in the field. So I take it a little bit seriously, where I feel like the ghost hunting shows and some people who are in the industry say, oh, like, ghost walking tours, they don't take it seriously. And it's a very serious thing for me, because these areas in our world have so much to share with us about an inkier side of our history, a darker side. And I feel like they have something to show us. So let's go see. Let's take it seriously. It's not about bringing in beepers and boopers, and it's not about retelling an old story. It's go and feel into it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so good. So good. I'm going to clap for you for a second. Hang on. Right there. Yay. Because, and this takes me, oh, how do I get out of here now? Okay. This can go from anywhere from actual, locations that have a name to them, to your own backyard and the people that may have lived there before there was ever a structure, right? And so this is one of the things that interest me about just this conversation in general. And it's like, this is, this land is my land, right? Is that the song? This land belonged to other people before us. So as empaths, sometimes we really cannot narrow down the way that we feel about a place or about where we live or whatnot. And it was actually someone on the Wisdom app that asked me about who owned this house before we moved into it, and who owned it before that, and who owned it before that. And we don't ask those questions, right? In the field of real estate, for example, which is where we come from. And people just, oh, I like the house, so I'm moving into it. But there's all these other things and aspects to our experience, or to our reality, if you will, that we, I just love that we're getting to talk more about these things. And by we, I mean me and you and whoever joins us.
Yes.
So I'm very, very happy and thankful that you joined us, Wynne. Thank you.